I know Pete's given a quick overview of what their backgrounds are, but I think perhaps before we start, it'd be useful to talk a little bit more as to what their background actually is, to put that into context for when you hear from them. So Simon, in the middle, is trained as an accountant and tax consultant and went on to spend 15 years in investment banking. More recently, he developed his own practice, operating structured investment products for private institutions, as well as providing an incubator for a variety of new businesses. Simon is known to be a serial investor and entrepreneur. Sam, to my right, is born and bred in Gibraltar. His background is also banking and finance. He has worked for multiple fintech companies and startups and is passionate about venture capital and blockchain. Sam has experience managing portfolios of a range of asset classes, including equities, fixed income, etc. He is currently the co-founder and head of investment of Digital Asset Management Limited, which is his new startup in Gibraltar. And last but certainly not least, Joanne. Like Sam, Gib born and bred. She worked with the likes of Lloyds and NatWest, and Joanne is an associate director at Abacus Financial Services and heads up the pensions and business development team. Abacus having recently launched a startup offering for companies who are considering setting up in Gibraltar. So as Pete said, we've heard a lot over the last day or so about the legal and regulatory landscape in Gib and the benefits of doing business here. But we haven't really heard much about Gibraltar generally. So I'll start by asking Simon, because I fear that Sam and Joanne, having been brought up here, are slightly biased. Simon, you made the decision to relocate here some years back. Perhaps we could start by you telling us a little bit more about your decision to relocate here and some of the key considerations that you took into account.
I think for a business I was operating at the time was regulated, and one of the key considerations was European regulation, because it was easy to operate in the space. Weather, climate. I can't say that tax didn't have an implication, but I moved here to work for someone else and then set up on my own. And typically, like a number of people that have come to live here, I had set out to come here for 2 years, and I have never left.
So I guess that's a good sign. And if I'm not mistaken, you have a young family as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, part of the process of being here, when my family came here, my kids were 2 and 5, and now they're sort of 15 and 11. And for me, being here, the access to an outdoor life is very different to being in the UK. It's very safe. One feels like you're part of a community. And from a family point of view, this is a really great place to live.
Joanne, I have a young family as well, and for me it's stressful sometimes just sort of packing up to go away for the weekend. So I can't imagine what it's like to have to relocate. Perhaps you could give us a little bit of an overview of how service providers in Gibraltar can help with the relocation, not just for the individuals, but for a company looking to actually set up here.
Mm-hmm. Yes, of course. Is this on? Well, okay. We do get lots and lots of inquiries. Initially, it's on maybe if a company wants to redomicile into Gibraltar, or completely set up from scratch, but it goes beyond that, you know. It's also about what is Gibraltar like, what does it entail, and what we offer is a support service. It's adding value as far as we can about what it means to move to Gibraltar, what, for example, what the taxation regime is here for corporates as well as for the individuals involved. And what we have is a very close working relationships with all sorts of local professional partners. And we will arrange meetings, we will do everything we can to assist, whether it's technical things like registering with the employment board or the income tax office, or whether it's simply forming the company, providing director services where necessary, accounting, and educating as well, because when you come from abroad, from a different jurisdiction, is also about educating our prospective clients looking to move to Gibraltar on what it means to have a compliant company in Gibraltar.
So I think I'd be looking for a type of concierge service to try and help us with that process. But I think there's already been mention about not just lifestyle, but also one of the key considerations for individuals is taxation when looking to relocate. And I'd like to maybe open this up to all the panelists, if any of you would like to add what you looked at when you were looking to relocate or when helping clients. What are the key questions in terms of tax in Gibraltar?
Okay. In general, obviously, Simon, you've got a life experience there. But from us, from a professional perspective, it's about what Gibraltar has to offer. The corporate taxation, the fact that there's no inheritance tax, capital gains tax, wealth tax, VAT, and so on. But also the special residency status. We do get a lot of inquiries, and we do get a lot of clients who compare across different jurisdictions with the HEP status in Gibraltar and the Category 2 status. That's very, very attractive for certain individuals, or those, in this field, particularly those with specialist skills. But I'm sure Simon can add more.
Well, when we moved here, which is coming up to 10 years ago, and part of the reason for it was regulation and a European climate, I suppose, and not being too far away from the UK, our process was adopting a service provider here, not yourself, unfortunately, but one of the other service providers linked to one of the law firms, which there are a number, and they basically took care of everything for us. We were looking at mainstream corporate tax of a very low rate, a little bit similar to a Dublin Docks company. So at the moment it's around 10%. At the time it was a bit lower. From a personal tax point of view, we engaged all of our staff above a certain category within the HEPS program, allowing us to pay tax in Gibraltar, but to be classified as a certain resident with high skill levels specific to our industry that allowed us to have a minimalized amount of tax that is paid compared to any other European jurisdiction.
Thank you. Sam, we've had a lot as well about Gibraltar's ability and courage, I guess, to innovate and to lead in this industry. I think you're a good example of homegrown talent and a good example of somebody who's currently undergoing a DLT application process. I can see a couple of regulator faces in the room, but perhaps if they cover their ears for a short while, you might enlighten the room as to what your experience has been to date.
Yeah, thanks. Great question. So I've been working in Gibraltar now for close to 5 years, and you come into these conferences and similar conferences, you always hear Gibraltar's open for business, easy place to do business, power of proximity. And I really hadn't experienced how true that was until embarking on this adventure 4 months ago, where really if you want to start up a business, you can do it here today, take out your notepad and meet just in this room your bankers, your accountancy firms, law firms, corporate services providers that can help you from A to Z, you name it. And really that sums it up, because that's really how efficient it was. Within 2 weeks, we had meetings with top 4 audit firms, top law firms, banking providers, and it's been great. And not only that, from the regulatory part, within a couple of days, we already had our first meeting with the FFC, and I'm assuming that in other jurisdictions, it's not easy to get in front of the regulators within hours or days, and just made everything so efficient.
And is there anything during that process that you would change, things that you've learned or things that you've experienced that perhaps in hindsight you would have done slightly differently?
Wow, yeah, that's a good question. I would say shop around. There's a lot of good companies in each of those categories, so don't necessarily go with your first one. I'm not saying that I've had a bad experience to date, but shop around, because there is a lot of companies that are specialized and may add value in certain areas that others can't.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the power of proximity, and I think this is probably one for Sam and Joanne again. I think definitely the accessibility to the regulator and other service providers is one of the things that is key to Gibraltar. Do you find that a lot of clients actually have considered that or Sam, did you consider that when deciding whether to set up in Gibraltar or looking elsewhere potentially to set up your business?
Do you want to take that? Or?
Yeah, sure. Our experience, and we've had a lot of feedback with prospective clients that we've seen, I think they are, it's very nice and very positive to see that they've told us, wow, we got on a plane, we came to Gibraltar. I mean, it all started with, an email inquiry followed with a Skype call, then come to Gibraltar, come and see us for yourselves. That's the sort of approach we like. So fly over to Gibraltar, spend 2 days here, and suddenly it's like, wow, how many connections. Meeting after meeting, we offer a hand-holding service. We show them, we walk them here, walk them there, get them to meet with different parties. And at the end of the 2 days, they can actually go back and get a real sense for what Gibraltar's like. And I think as well, because power proximity, like Sam was saying, is so important, because what it does is it shows that Gibraltar has a lot of positive energy and has a very, very positive attitude, and there's a great spirit of collaboration. We don't know everything, especially from where I'm coming from a traditional services provider. It's been a steep learning curve, and it's an ongoing process, but it's one that we're all really, really keen to engage in. So I think it's that attitude to want to learn, and I think that's what makes the jurisdiction stand out for the rest, that if we don't know the answers, we'll collaborate, we'll talk to experts, and we will find out so we can move forward.
So Simon, that proximity, I guess, was quite similar to what you were used to in the UK, right?
Can I speak? There's no other jurisdiction, I think, where you'll have essentially the Prime Minister come and open a Fintech conference. I don't think so anyway. And you have the Finance Minister also speak, and then come and speak with people in the audience afterwards. You'll never experience that anywhere. And we've got a forward-thinking government here. It's adopting stuff that is, as I think David Gowdy said yesterday, it's 10 steps forward from the rest of the world, I think, in this space.
So I think we've covered some of the practicalities of setting up here, tax, residency, but I guess one of the key factors that we've heard of as well is the requirement to have mind and management and substance here in GIB, particularly to apply for a DLT license. And with that comes the need to have suitable employees that are fit and proper and that have the necessary experience. And I think on this one, I'd probably turn to Simon and Sam, who have experience in setting up businesses and going through that recruitment process.
I suppose my business, to start with here, was slightly different, and we brought a team of people from the UK, established them all in places here. They're all very nice, they're very happy to live here for quite a long time. Unfortunately, they've all relocated back to the UK after about 8 years of being here. But just to touch on stuff for the fintech space, I made quite some investments here into the fintech space, and there's a very large gaming community here. There is a very large talent pool of people that are quite well placed to take advantage of the coming boom, I think, that Gibraltar will have as a part of the regulation and the crypto market.
Sam, how have you found the process of potentially in the future looking to recruit people? I guess there's, as Simon mentioned, the ability to look to some of the payment institutions, payment processors, and the online gaming industry, right?
Yeah, for sure. There's definitely a talent pool here. It needs to grow. Funny enough, we got an email in last week from a student at university, a local, and he's studying finance, and he said, I'm really interested in coming back and working an internship, a 6-month internship. That's probably going to be our first hire. There's 3 of us now, but we're certainly looking to grow. I really can't add as much value on that point as Simon because I've never really hired anybody just yet. But I can actually maybe share some experience from my time at Wavecrest prior to this. And a lot of our employees came from the gaming industry and actually payments industry locally too, that have some good talent. So.
What about office space? I mean, that's always, particularly in startup mode, you want to try and keep your overheads fairly low. What are you guys looking at in terms of office space at the moment?
So we've been blessed and we're very fortunate. One of the partners in our business, his family own real estate, so we've been able to slip in somewhere for very cheap. As far as offices are concerned, I know we're constantly building new establishments. Like World Trade Center just moving to Gibraltar. I think, Joanne, you could probably add some value on the office space piece, right? Because you help your clients find offices.
Yeah, of course. What we do is it's the local estate agents or just through contacts, through people who know we arrange viewings. There is a sort of the co-working spaces available in specially designed premises that sort of rent out office space, which tends to have all-inclusive sort of the utility bills, and you can rent rack space, you can not have to pay the electricity bills, all included in the price. It makes it easy. They do the minimum 12-month rental, which is a requirement, obviously, if you're applying for the DLT legislation to actually be based in Gibraltar. They do a shorter term options if that's not necessary. But we have actually seen quite a lot of clients who are interested in having their sort of standalone office, which is nice. It's a sign of integration in the community, and there might be a shortage, but things move quickly, I think, in Gibraltar, and I am sure that there will be plans, and as demand goes up, I'm sure that the supply will evolve.
Yeah, I think it's, if you can agree with me here, for those of you who are visiting Gibraltar for the first time, maybe looking to set up an office, your newer, sexier looking buildings are going to be more expensive. And if you go into town and you want a more historical office space, if you want to call it that, then it's going to be more cost efficient for you. However, then you don't have the advantage of being in a building where there's 20 to 30 other startups and all having lunch together and networking. So there's pros and cons.
Simon, my wife, much like you, relocated here from the UK, actually with the online gaming industry. And one of the things that at first she found a little bit daunting was the idea of, let's face it, Gibraltar's a small place. But thankfully, we've got Spain in our back garden, essentially. Perhaps you'd like to explain a little bit more how that influenced your decision as well.
What can I say? We talked about this yesterday. Commute time. So my commute every day into the city was around about 8 to 9 hours a week on average. And that reduced down to around 20 minutes per week, I think, when I moved here, which is quite a substantial change. There is a definite change in lifestyle and pace here. With regards to Spain, there are very few places you can live where you have 300 plus, 320, I think, is the average sunny days a year. The temperature is similar to California most of the year.
I wouldn't believe that today, though.
No, today is the worst day of the year in terms of weather, so it's not really promoting Gib. You have, it's also very similar to Cape Town. I don't know whether there's any South Africans here. You got driving time from here, 3 hours is a ski resort, which is open most of the winter. Pete mentioned earlier his kids are trapped up there at the moment because of the bad weather the whole of Europe's having. So it's not just centric to Gibraltar today. And 40 minutes from the border the other way, you have Tarifa, which is the kite surfing capital of Europe, which is a fabulous place. My kids' party last week, one of the kids couldn't come because he had a kite surfing lesson at the same time, so quite unusual. But and as I said, it's an outdoor life. My kids go horse riding every weekend. This is classified as the best place to play golf in Spain because of the proximity to Valderrama, Soto Grande, Real Soto Grande, San Roque, which are all sort of top 30 golf courses in the world. the list goes on and on and on. You're four major cities within an hour and a half's drive. It's a great place to be.
I think we're more or less at the end of our time slot, so perhaps if we might have a couple of minutes unless Pete takes the mic from me.
Anyone a question? Hi, I'm Ian Bresson from Sovereign. Good luck, Sam, with recruitment, because that's
Thank you.
certainly been one of the more difficult aspects here. Clearly, looking at new staff coming in here, this is going to be different from the gaming side, different from banking, from corporate service work. People are going to have different skills. It's great to have that pool of people in the gaming world, but you're just going to nick them from there, and the gaming people are going to have to replace them. It's the same as bankers switching jobs in Gibraltar and so on. Interested in the panel's views, just in particular on perhaps the university here could add some sort of module relating specifically to blockchain and DLT, which could then be used with your chap, Sam, that's come to join you, so that we get some new people over the next 2-3 years, because age is not a barrier. If you're good enough, you're old enough. I wonder what the panel might think to that sort of thing.
Yeah, great if we could plug into the education pool here in Gibraltar. Just having coffee and discussing how at any one time there's 5,000 students in Gibraltar. So I don't see why we can't introduce some courses and influence what students are going to be studying, because they could come back. I mean, if there is going to be a boom here, and there's going to be, I saw co-vesting headquartered here yesterday. I know B21 are headquartering here, going to be hiring 85 plus in the next 12, 24 months, same as co-vesting, 60 plus. Students who are going abroad and studying can come back and slip into really nice jobs and have really nice lifestyles, benefiting from everything that Simon just mentioned.
And I think Gibraltar is accommodating. So if you take one of the gaming companies here, which is Lottoland, I remember them starting here with like 6 or 7 people, and they grew to 180 people. And the majority of them, I would say, mid-20s moving here. It's an unusual sort of demographic where you've got people moving here that haven't families, because here is a very family-oriented place, but they've developed their own community. They've been accommodated from a staff point of view, from a housing point of view rather, also from an office point of view. There's been additional offices built just for their business as they continue to grow, and they're a real power force in that sort of online lottery-based company.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's also a gap in the market here for some specialized recruiters to come in and really clean up. I know Nick Hughes from EULite Consulting is doing some good work so far. I had an individual message me on LinkedIn last night, living in Tarifa. Hey, I'm partially retired. I'm living the rest of my days in Tarifa, but I've seen that Gibraltar's moving in the crypto space. I'm fairly interested. Here's my CV. The guy had 5 years IBM, 5 years Lloyd's, 6 years Citigroup, and he's interested in cryptos. I just pass that straight to Nick. You know, he'll be swept up. So if you do speak to anybody that's interested, I know Nick can help.
Any more questions at all? I'd like to point out, by the way, that Nick, who's being referred to here, is my co-organiser of this event. So I'm going to find out exactly how much he's paid you for some of those references. And he's going to be too busy doing that because we're going to be running another conference. So if there's no more questions, then that's great. Panel, thank you very much.
Thank you.